Hello everyone, I'm here with another video on the chapter All American Slur. This is by Lensey Namioka. So this is a story about a Chinese family who emigrates to America and what changes or what differences they find between the table manners, the way of dressing, the things that they eat, how they eat, all that is learned by the Chinese family. They bring about those changes to settle down, and here is a wonderful excerpt where we see how the two families adjust with each other. Let us enjoy. The first time our family was invited out to dinner in America, we disgraced ourselves while eating celery. We had emigrated to this country from China, and during our early days here, we had a hard time with American table manners. In China, we never ate celery raw or any other kind of vegetable raw. We always had to disinfect the vegetables in boiling water first. When we were presented with our first relish tray, the raw celery caught us unprepared. So this is about a family, a Chinese family who have shifted to America, and they find the first thing when they are invited to their neighbor's house who are Americans, they find the table manners very different. The starting is when they are served raw celery. In China, they used to boil all the vegetables before eating, but here they were served raw celery, and this really was something which they were not prepared for. So let us see how they eat it. We had been invited to dinner by our neighbors, the Gleasons. After arriving at the house, we shook hands with our hosts and packed ourselves into a sofa. As our family of four sat stiffly in a row, my younger brother and I stole glances at our parents for a clue as to what to do next. Mrs. Gleason offered the relish tray to Mother. The tray looked pretty, with its tiny red radishes, curly stick of carrots, and long slender stalks of pale green celery. "Do try some of the celery, Mrs. Lynn," she said. "It's from the local farmer and it's sweet." Mother picked up one of the green stalks and father followed suit. Then I picked up. Here is a tray where they have all the raw things. Here we have the celery, we have the broccoli and other fruits and vegetables that can be eaten raw with the dip in the middle. And my brother did too. So there we sat, each with a stalk of celery in our right hand. Mrs. Gleason kept smiling. "Would you like to try some of the dip, Mrs. Lynn? It's my own recipe, sour cream and onion flakes with a dash of Tabasco sauce." So here they were offered celery, raw celery to eat. There was a radish also. Everything was looking very nice in the tray. But this Chinese family had never eaten raw celery. In fact, Mrs. Gleason very politely also offered them to try the dip that was her Mrs. Gleason's own recipe, which was made up of sour cream, onion flakes, and a dash of Tabasco sauce. Most Chinese don't care for dairy products, and in those days I wasn't even ready to drink fresh milk. Sour cream sounded perfectly revolting. Revolting means which was not inviting, she did not want to have. Our family shook our heads in unison and everybody said that they did not want. Mrs. Gleason went off with the relish tray to the other guests, and we carefully watched to see what they did. Everyone seemed to eat the raw vegetable quite happily. Mother took a bite of her celery crunch. "It's not bad," she whispered. Father took a bite of his celery crunch. "Yes, it's good," he said. Looked surprised. I took a bite, and then my brother. Crunch, crunch. It was more than good. It was delicious. Raw celery was slight sparkle, a zingy taste, and you don't get in cooked celery. When Mrs. Gleason came around with the relish tray, we each took another stalk of celery except my brother. So here they really relished the celery, raw celery that was offered to them, which they had never eaten before, and in fact they felt that it had a different zingy taste which the cooked celery did not give. And here the family is eating. In fact, the brother did not take one, he took two. There was only one problem. Long strings ran through the length of the stalk and they got caught in my teeth. When I help my mother in the kitchen, I always pull the strings out before slicing celery. I pulled the strings out of my stalk. Zip, zip. My brother followed suit. Zip, zip. To my left, my parents were taking care of their own stalks. Zip, zip, zip. Suddenly, I realized that there was dead silence except for our zipping. Looking up, I saw that eyes of everyone in the room there were on our family. Mr. and Mrs. Gleason, their daughter Meg, who was my friend, and their neighbors, the Baddles, they were all staring at us. We busily pulled the strings of our celery. That wasn't the end of it. Mrs. Gleason announced that dinner was served and invited us to the dining table. It was lavishly covered with platters of food, but we couldn't see any chairs around the table. So we helpfully carried over some dining chairs and sat down. All the other guests just stood there. Mrs. Gleason bent down and whispered to us, "This is a buffet dinner." So it so happened that when they were offered raw celery, this family was used to eating celery after slicing out the strings. In fact, the narrator remembers that she used to help her mother before cooking. They used to take off the strings. So they started taking off the strings. In fact, it started making a zip zip sound. Everybody turned around to see them because this was something different for them, and it was really very embarrassing for the family. In fact, this was not the end of embarrassment. When Mrs. Gleason announced that dinner was served, they noticed that there were no chairs all around the dining table or the table where the food was served. So they started carrying their own chairs towards the table. In fact, they were stopped by Mrs. Gleason, who bent and told them, whispered to them that it was a buffet dinner where the food could be taken from the table and could be either you could stand or eat, or you could take it, bring it to the living room to eat. So this was again a little embarrassing moment for this family. You help yourself to some food and eat it in the living room. Our family beat a retreat back to the sofa as if chased by the enemy soldiers. For the rest of the evening, too mortified to go back to the dining table, I nursed a bit of potato salad on my plate. Next day, Meg and I got on school bus together. I wasn't sure how she would feel about me after the spectacle our family made at the party. But she was just the same as usual, and the only reference she made to the party was, "Hope you and your folks got enough to eat last night. You certainly didn't take very much." Mom never tries to figure out how much food to prepare. She just puts everything on the table and hopes for the best. I began to relax. The Gleasons' dinner party wasn't so different from the Chinese meal after all. My mother also puts everything on the table and hopes for the best. Meg was the first friend I made after we came to America. I eventually got acquainted with a few other kids in the school, but Meg was still the only real friend I had. So it so happened that after Mrs. Gleason explained to them that this was a buffet dinner, they could put food and bring the plates in the living room and have in a comfortable manner. The family felt very embarrassed. In fact, they chased to the sofa where they were sitting before, as if the enemy were running behind them. And in fact, they felt very ashamed to go to the dining table again and again. So in fact, the narrator says that she only had a bit of potato salad, which she ate. The next day, Meg and the narrator met in the school bus, and in fact, Meg mentioned about the party, saying that she hoped that this family, the narrator's family who had come from China, had enjoyed the food because they had eaten very less. In fact, she felt that her mother, Mrs. Gleason, never thought how much to cook. In fact, she made everything and put everything that she had made on the table, and she would expect and hope that everything was best and everybody liked it. And same when the narrator thought even her mother used to do the same in China, so she felt everything was similar. Meg became a very good friend of the narrator. In fact, she also made other friends, but Meg was the best friend. My brother didn't have any problems making friends. He spent all his time with some boys who were teaching him baseball, and in no time he could speak English much faster than I could. Not better, but faster. I worried more about making mistakes, and I spoke carefully, making sure I could say everything right before opening my mouth. At least I had a better accent than my parents, who never really got rid of the Chinese accent. Even years later, my parents had both studied English in school before coming to America, but what they had studied was mostly written English, not spoken. So it so happened that the narrator tells about his brother had no problems in making friends because he started teaching, these boys started teaching him baseball, and he learned very quickly. In fact, he learned English much faster than the narrator herself. The narrator says that the narrator used to be very worried about making mistakes. In fact, she thought she should first, decide what she has to say in English before opening her mouth. And the parents found it even more difficult. They took longer to start speaking in English, although they had learned English before coming to America. So they had to learn the language also. Father's approach to English was a scientific one. Since Chinese verbs have no tense, he was fascinated by the way English verbs changed form according to whether they were in the present, past, imperfect, perfect, pluperfect, future perfect tense. He was always making diagrams of verbs and their inflections, and he looked for opportunities to show off his mastery of the pluperfect and the future perfect tenses, his two favorites. I shall have finished my project by Monday, he would say smugly. So here the father also brought about they also learned the words in English. In fact, in Chinese, the verbs did not have any tenses, but father started learning in his own scientific way. He, used to make diagrams to learn all the different types of tenses. In fact, after a few days, he started showing off and he tried to show off that he had gained mastery over English. Mother's approach was to memorize lists of polite phrases that would cover all possible social situations. She was constantly muttering things like, I'm fine, thank you, and you. Once she accidentally stepped on someone's foot and hurriedly blurted out, oh, that's quite all right. Embarrassed by her slip, she resolved to do better next time. So when someone stepped on her foot, she cried, you are welcome. So here the narrator in a humorous manner talks about the mother's approach. In fact, the mother, thought of learning a list of few phrases and sentences so that she could use whenever they were required. In fact, she started using them a little incorrectly. Once, when she had stepped on someone's foot, she hurriedly, just said in a hastily manner, "Oh, that's quite all right." And in fact, when someone else stepped on her foot, she said, "You are welcome." So this was something humorous that was going on, but they were all trying to adjust and they were all trying to learn the new language. At least the kids in the school wouldn't stop and stare at me in the hallways, which was what they did when they saw me in my white blouse and navy blue skirt, and that went a couple of inches below the knees. When Meg came to my house, I invited her to try on my Chinese dresses, and once with high collar and slits up the sides, Meg's eyes were bright as she looked at herself in the mirror. She struck several sultry poses and we nearly fell over laughing. The dinner party at Gleason's didn't stop my growing friendship with Meg. Things were getting better for me in other ways too. Mother finally bought me some jeans at the end of the month when father got his paycheck. She wasn't in any hurry about buying them at first until I worked on her. This is what I did. Since we didn't have a car in those days, I often ran down to the neighborhood store to pick up things for her. The groceries cost less at a big supermarket, but the closest one was many blocks away. So it so happened that she was a Chinese, our narrator was a Chinese, and she used to wear skirts that were inches below the knees, which was a little different attire in the US. But Meg was a very good friend of hers. In fact, Meg became a closer friend. They both became fond of each other. Meg was invited to to the Lynn's family's house, in fact, the narrator's house, and she also tried the Chinese dresses, which she really loved. And she stood in front of the mirror, and she also, struck with several poses, and everybody really loved the way she reacted, and they couldn't help but they laughed and had fun. And their friendship was, they became closer. In fact, everybody was wearing jeans over there. So the mother, in the beginning, she was not able to buy jeans for her. But later, when the father got the paycheck, she also got a pair of jeans. In fact, our narrator had to work a lot for this. She used to help her mother a lot in the groceries to bring things from the supermarket. Once there's an episode which I'll just read. Once there was a need of flour and there was no flour at home. So let us see what our narrator does. Here we can see the Chinese dress, and that is the American way. They usually wear jeans casually when they dress up. So it so happened one day when she ran, who's she? This is Mrs. Lynn, the narrator's mother. When she ran out of flour, I offered to borrow a bike from our neighbor's son and buy a 10-pound bag of flour at the big supermarket. I mounted the boy's bike and waved to my mother. "I'll be back in 5 minutes." Before I started pedaling, I heard a voice behind me. "You can't go out in public like that. People can see all the way up your thighs." "I'm sorry," I said innocently. "I thought you were in a hurry to get the flour. For dinner, we were going to have pot stickers, that is the fried cheese dumplings, and we needed a lot of flour." "Couldn't you borrow a girl's bicycle?" complained Mother. "That way your skirt won't be pushed up." "There aren't too many of those around," I said. "Almost all girls wear jeans while riding a bike, so they don't see any point in buying a girl's bike." So here they are talking about the bicycles. The American girls, they usually wear jeans, and so it is a comfort for them even if they have a boy's bicycle. It is very comfortable for them because they are wearing jeans and everything is covered. But here, the narrator was in skirts, and when she took the boy's bicycle, the neighbor's bicycle, then her skirt went up, and the mother did not like that. uh, this way she should go into public where her thighs are visible. So then the mother told her to borrow some girl's cycle, and to which a narrator told her mother that there were not many people who had the girl's bicycle. This because these girls used to wear, the American girls used to wear jeans, and they were very comfortable with the male bicycle. We didn't eat pot stickers that evening, and mother was thoughtful. Next day we took the bus downtown and she bought me a pair of jeans. In the same week my mother made a baseball team. My brother made a baseball team of his junior high school. Father started taking driving lessons and mother discovered rummage sales. We soon got all the furniture we needed, plus a dartboard and a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. 14 hours later, we discovered that it was 999-piece jigsaw puzzle. There was hope that the Lynns might become a normal American family after all. Then came our dinner at the Lakeview restaurant. The Lakeview was an expensive restaurant, one of those places where the head waiter dressed in tails conducted you to your seat. The only light came from the candles and flaming desserts. In one corner of the room, a lady harpist played tinkling melodies. So the narrator goes on to tell how everybody started adjusting in America. The first thing the mother did was to take the narrator to the town and buy a pair of jeans for her. The brother became, became a member of the baseball team. The father started learning driving, and the mother discovered various rummage sales. They also bought furniture. They also bought a jigsaw puzzle in which they were expected to have 1,000 pieces to uh, join and solve the puzzle, and they discovered that there were just 999. Later, we come to know that this family went to the Lakeview restaurant. This was an expensive restaurant where they had gone, where the head waiter used were dressed in tails and who used to conduct you to the seat and serve you in a very polite and courteous manner. And only the lights over there were the candle lights and flaming desserts. A lady harpist could be seen. Harp is a musical instrument. A lady harpist could be seen tinkling her melodies. Father wanted to celebrate because he had just been promoted. He worked for an electronics company, and after his English started improving, his superiors decided to appoint him to a position more suited to his training. The promotion not only brought a higher salary, but was also a tremendous boost to his pride. Up to then, he had eaten only in Chinese restaurants. Although my brother and I were becoming fond of hamburgers, my parents didn't care much for Western food other than chow mein. But this was a special occasion, and father asked his co-workers to recommend a really elegant restaurant. So there we were at Lakeview stumbling after a head waiter in the murky dining room. So we came to know that this Chinese family visited the Lakeview restaurant because the father wanted to celebrate his promotion. He had learned English and now he was performing so well that he was promoted. His salary was given a raise, and so here they were in the Lakeview restaurant celebrating his promotion. At our table, we were handed our menus and they were so big that to read mine, I almost had to stand up again. But why, brother? It was mostly in French anyway. Father, being an engineer, was always systematic. He took out a pocket French dictionary. They told that Most of the items would be in French, so I came prepared. He even had a pocket flashlight the size of marking pen. While mother held the flashlight over the menu, he looked up the items that were in French. Pâté en Ceroute, he muttered. Let's see, pâté is paste, ceroute is crust. A paste in crust. The waiter stood looking patient. I squirmed and died at least 50 times. At long last, father gave up. Why don't we just order 4 complete dinners at random? He suggested. Isn't that risky? Asked mother. The French eat some rather peculiar things, I have heard. So it so happened when they went to the Lakeview restaurant, they were given the menu and there were so many items in the menu. It was such a long one and moreover it was written in French. The father used to carry a French pocket dictionary and also a pen-size flashlight. So the father and mother of our narrator, they kept reading at the items in the menu and also kept translating. So this was something very embarrassing that embarrassed our narrator. In fact, she says that she squirmed and died at least 50 times at whatever they were doing. The waiter too was standing very patiently waiting for them to order. So father gave up at last. He couldn't understand and so he said it would be best to order 4 complete dinners at random. But the mother was uh, not sure about it. In fact, she said it would be very risky. A Chinese can eat anything a French can eat, father declared. The soup arrived in a plate. How do you get soup up from a plate? I glanced at the other diners, but the ones at the nearby tables were not on their soup course, while the more distant ones were invisible in the darkness. Fortunately, my parents had studied books on Western etiquettes before they came to America. Tilt your plate, whispered my mother. It's easier to spoon the soup up that way. So it so happened that when mother said that it was a little risky to order anything that the French eat, father declared that the Chinese ate everything that the Frenchmen ate. So the soup was served, and the soup was not served in a bowl. In fact, it was served in a plate, and everybody started glancing here and there as to how to eat the soup, how to drink the soup. So the mother had studied the American etiquettes, Western etiquettes before coming to America, and she guided everybody that they needed to tilt their plates so that they could spoon the soup easily. She was right. Tilting the plate did the trick, but the etiquette book didn't say anything about what you did after soup reached your lips. As any respectable Chinese knows, the correct way to eat your soup is to slurp. This helps to cool the liquid and prevent you from burning your lips. It only shows your appreciation. We showed our appreciation. Schlup went my father, went my mother, went me, and went the brother who was the hungriest. So that is the sound when you make sound when you drink something. And so the whole restaurant must be, sounding with their sloop, sloop, sloop. So it was something that really embarrassed our narrator. The lady harpist stopped playing to take a rest, and in the silence, our family's consumption of soup suddenly seemed unnaturally loud. You know how it sounds on a rocky beach when the tide goes out and the water drains from all those little pools? They go. So that is the sound actually I'm trying to make out so that you realize what is this. That was the Lin family eating soup. At the next table, a waiter was pouring wine. When a large sloop reached him, he froze. The bottle continued to pour, and the red wine flooded the tabletop and into the lap of the customer. Even the customer didn't notice anything at first, being only hypnotized by the. It was too much. I needed to go to the toilet, I mumbled, jumping to my feet. A waiter, sensing my urgency, quickly directed me to the ladies' room. I splashed cold water on my burning face, and as I dried myself with a paper towel, I stared into the mirror. In this perfumed ladies' room, with its pink and silver wallpaper and marbled sinks, I looked completely out of place. What was I doing here? What was our family doing in the Lakeview restaurant in America? Now, actually, this sloop incident really embarrassed our narrator. In fact, when she saw that at the next table, the waiter who was pouring wine forgot that he was pouring wine, and in fact, he poured the red wine on the tabletop, and in fact, on the customer also. Even the customer did not notice because everybody was busy noticing this Chinese family eating or drinking their soup slop slop. So, out of this embarrassment, our narrator quickly ran to the toilet, and there her face was burning out of embarrassment. She quickly splashed water on her face and felt really out of place. She looked herself at the mirror. In fact, she felt that it was totally different here. What were these Chinese people doing here in America? And she felt very odd. The door to the ladies' room opened. A woman came in and glanced curiously at me. I retreated into one of the toilet cubicles and latched the door. Time passed, maybe half an hour, maybe an hour. Then I heard the door open again and my mother's voice. Are you there? Are you not sick? Are you? There was real concern in her voice. A girl can't leave her family just because they slurped their soup. Besides, the toilet cubicle had few drawbacks as a permanent residence. I'm all right, I said, undoing the latch. Mother didn't tell me how the rest of the dinner went, and I didn't want to know. In the weeks following, I managed to push the whole thing into the back of my mind, where it jumped out at me only a few times a day. Even now, I turn hot all over when I think of the Lakeview restaurant. But by the time we had been in this country for 3 months, our family was definitely making progress towards becoming Americanized. I remember my parents' first PTA meeting. Father wore neat suit and tie, and mother put on the first pair of high heels. She stumbled only once. They met my homeroom teacher and beamed as she told them that I would make honor roll. So now, when our narrator was there in the ladies' toilet, she was very embarrassed. Someone entered the toilet and she quickly went into one of the cubicles to sit over there. And in fact, she stayed there for half an hour or an hour or so. She didn't come out on her own. In fact, her mother had to come and find her. She came searching for her and asking whether she was okay or not. And the girl came out and she did not ask anything about the dinner. In fact, even after coming back home, she just tried to push the memory of this incident behind everything else. So now it's been 3 months and now everybody was quite Americanized. They had trained themselves as Americans do, and it was the first PTA meeting, that is the Parent Teacher Association meeting, where the father of our narrator wore a very neat suit with tie, and mother, she wore her first high heels because in China they wear flats. So, and they went to meet the class teacher, who actually beamed, who was very happy, and in fact she praised and said that our narrator would be on the honor roll, that is on amongst the best children. Soon, at the rate I was going means the rate at which the narrator was learning things. Of course, Chinese etiquette forced father to say that I was very stupid girl and mother to protest that the teacher was showing favoritism towards me, but I could tell that they both were proud. The day came when parents announced that they wanted to give a dinner party. We had invited Chinese friends to eat with us before, but this dinner was going to be different. In addition to Chinese American family, we were going to invite the Gleasons. Gee, I can hardly wait to have dinner at your house, Meg said to me. I just love Chinese food. So it so happened that when the parents went to the PTA meeting, they were very proud of their daughter when the teacher praised the narrator. But out of Chinese etiquette, they said that she was a stupid girl, and the mother said that no, the teacher was maybe showing favoritism, so she was praising. That was just a Chinese etiquette not to praise their own child in front of everybody. Next thing that was good that was announced by the parents was that they were inviting the Chinese family, the American family to their own house. So it was going to be a Chinese American family dinner. And in fact, the Gleasons were also invited, and our narrator was very happy for this. And even the Gleasons' uh, daughter, that is Meg, was very happy because she loved Chinese food. That was a relief. Mother was a good cook, but I wasn't sure if the people who ate sour cream would also eat chicken gizzards stewed in soy sauce. Mother decided not to take a chance with chicken gizzards. Since we had Western guests, she set the table with large dinner plates, which we never used in Chinese meals. In fact, we didn't use individual plates at all, but picked up food from the platters in the middle of all the table and brought it directly to our rice bowls. Following the practice of Chinese American restaurant, Mother also placed large serving spoons on the platters. The dinner started well. Mrs. Gleason exclaimed at the beautifully arranged dishes of food, the colorful candied fruit in sweet and sour pork dish, the noodle thin shreds of chicken meat stir-fried with tiny peas, and the glistening pink prawns in a ginger sauce. At first, I was too busy enjoying my food to notice how the guests were doing. But soon I remembered my duties. Sometimes guests were too polite to help themselves, and you had to serve them with more food. So it so happened that uh, Mrs. Lynn tried to cook food that would really make the Americans happy and comfortable. She, in fact, served everything in the same way as she had seen in the restaurant and also at the Gleason's family. She kept big serving bowls in the on the platters that were served on the dining table, which was different from the Chinese people because the Chinese used to serve themselves straight from the platter into their rice bowls. Rice bowls were small bowls. Individual plates were not provided in China. So this was something different that the family did. Our narrator, first she enjoyed her food, but later she felt that she was the host and she had to be polite enough to serve the Americans because there were times when the guests were too shy to take food on their own, and so they had to be served. I glanced at Meg to see if she needed more food, and my eyes nearly popped out at the sight of a plate. It was piled with food, the sweet and sour meat pushed right against the chicken shreds, and the chicken sauce ran into the prawns. She had been taking food from the second dish before she had finished eating her helping from the first. Horrified, I turned to look at Mrs. Gleason. She was dumping rice out of her bowl and putting it on her dinner plate. Then she ladled prawns and gravy on top of the rice and mixed everything together the way you mix sand, gravel, cement to make concrete. I couldn't bear to look at any longer, and I turned to Mr. Gleason. He was chasing a pea round his plate. Several times he got it to the edge, but when he tried to pick it up, With his chopsticks, it rolled back to the center of the plate again. Finally, he put down his chopsticks and picked up the pea with his fingers. He really did. A grown man. So, our narrator, being the host, she went towards Maggie to see if she could serve anything, if towards Meg, if Meg required anything, and she was shocked to see the way Meg had piled her plate up, everything together. In fact, in China, when they eat one dish, they complete that and then they take the second dish as a second serving. Here in America, everything was taken all together, and so her plate was seen piled up with different types of dishes. In fact, she just was too shocked, horrified, and when she turned around to look at Mrs. Gleason and Mr. Gleason's plate, it was something similar. In fact, in Mr. Gleason's plate, she noticed that he was trying to pick up a pea using his chopsticks, but he did not succeed, and in fact, he left the chopsticks and ate the pea with his fingers. So this was something different that this family was witnessing. All of us, our family and the Chinese guests, stopped eating to watch the activities of the Gleasons. I wanted to giggle. Then I caught my mother's eyes on me. She frowned and shook her head slightly, and I understood the message. The Gleasons were not used to Chinese ways, and they were just coping the best they could. For some reason, I thought of the celery strings. When the main course were finished, Mother brought out a platter of fruit. I hope you weren't expecting a sweet dessert, she said. Since the Chinese don't eat dessert, I didn't think to prepare any. Oh, I couldn't possibly eat dessert, said Mrs. Gleason. I'm simply stuffed. Meg had different ideas. When the table was cleared, she announced that she and I were going for a walk. I don't know about you, but I feel like dessert, she told me when we were outside. Come on, there's Dairy Queen down the street. So it so happened that the Chinese families, the Chinese guests, they really enjoyed looking at the Gleasons, and in fact our narrator wanted to giggle, but the mother gestured her not to be so rude, not to giggle, because the American family was also trying to learn the Chinese ways. After the dinner was over, a platter of fruit was brought by the narrator's mother. In fact, she also told that in China they did not serve sweet dessert after dinner, so she had not prepared anything. Mrs. Gleason, being polite, said that she was already too full and she had just no need for any type of dessert. Meg had a different idea. Meg took the narrator for a walk after dinner, and they went to the Dairy's Queen down the street to have some dessert. This is, you can see the chopstick over here. And here, if you want, you can go through this. I took a comic strip from here, from the net, and I have put it here. This is a comic strip of the chapter. I could use a big chocolate milkshake, although I didn't really want anything more to eat. I insisted on paying for the milkshakes. After all, I was still hostess. Meg got her large chocolate milkshake and I had a small one. Even so, she was finishing hers while I was only half done. Towards the end, she pulled hard on her straws and went so she also was slop, slop, slop. Do you always slurp when you eat a milkshake? I asked before I could stop myself. Meg grinned. Sure. All Americans slurp. So this was the humorous chapter. In fact, everyone is almost the same. We all enjoy our food in a different way. Slurping food, there's nothing bad in it. We should enjoy all the dishes in our way that we like. I hope you enjoyed. I'll share the video of its question answers in a few days. I hope you enjoy the chapter. Take care of yourself. Goodbye.